Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've just come back from seeing Cold War, which is a Polish film directed by Paweł Pawlikowski, written and directed, I think, co-written.
Co-written, yes, there are two other writers.
About a sort of distant, a relationship that takes place...
It's a romance.
It's a romance for sure.
A delirious romance set in the period of the Cold War,
between 49 and 59.
No, between 49 and 64.
Post-war Poland, initially, and then the action travels across Europe to East Berlin, to Paris,
yes.
to Yugoslavia.
It's such a romantic film. I mean, I was swoony throughout. It's a film that makes you both swoony and sad. So it's like a real romance in the sense that, you know, the characters love and love and love and nothing goes well. They're constantly separated, right?
Before we go on further, I think we should say we saw this at the Mac, and once again, the investment in 4K digital projection at the Mac has paid dividends. The image is astonishing.
It's so beautiful.
It's in black and white and it's full frame, 4:3 ratio.
It's luminous, this
and
film.
it sings the image. It's beautiful. And you know, like, very often I think the 4:3 frame these days is used to show claustrophobia, you know, a kind of tightness of space, and occasionally it is in this, but actually for the most part you get some amazing sort of landscape shots. There's one shot in particular early on where it's in winter in Poland. It's all white and the ground's white and the sky's pure white, and you just see at the bottom of the screen, you know, a van and a figure of a woman, and just the shape of the horizon, but it's just brilliant pure white. It's an amazing image.
Yes,
and there's some amazing, beautiful poetry in the visuals.
I mean, in the first 5 shots of the film, you just think, you know, you're with a visual poet. Like, kind of every image was resonant, really, and you just think, oh, this is so original. It's so interesting to look at and meaningful. The thing with the church and. It's like a bombed out church where you have these murals of icons painted on them, but, you know, kind of the paint has been bombed out of some of the icons. It's just...
Yeah, you're just left with these two eyes, I think, of Jesus staring.
It's beautiful.
I think it's the one guy, the sort of government guy, Soviet government guy, walks into this bombed out church, and then he sees these eyes of Jesus that are still there staring at him, and then I think he crosses himself and becomes reverent because he's being watched.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's briefly say in more concrete terms what the plot is. So
the film begins with these two artistic directors, a male and a female. One of them is the pianist and conductor, who's the hero of our story, and is played by Tomasz Kot. And they're rounding up peasants to sing Polish folk songs as a troupe. So it's a way of building up morale after the war. And basically this peasant woman, who doesn't sing very well, actually, comes in, and Tomasz makes a case for her. And it's clear that, you know, part of the interest is sexual. Yeah,
she's very young. She must be about 18.
Yes. And quickly we're told that she's been in jail, and she's been in jail for attempting to murder her father. And then we're also quickly told that the reason why she did that is because her father kept trying to mistake her for her mother, and she wasn't having it.
Yeah, that's her.
And she taught him the difference.
Well, there's a thing about they have her kind of investigated by the intelligence guy.
Yeah.
And he comes back saying she was in jail for having killed her father, and then her version of the story is that she didn't kill him, and that's never resolved. But it's also not hugely important.
Yes. To me, it is kind of a little bit important because the connotation is that she castrated him.
Yeah.
You know, so you're already kind of faced with this castrating woman, really.
Femme fatale.
Yeah, but actually, the thing about her is that she loves, and she's kind of wildly in love with this man. Yeah, and actually, he's wildly in love with her, and actually, that's the dilemma of the film. They're both completely in love with each other, even when he's in bed with another woman, and he asks her, "Where have you been?" He says, "I've been to see the woman of my life." Right, so it's never like at once in question, and that's why the film, I think, works so beautifully, because that's never in doubt, even though at moments they might be jealous of each other, but kind of their feelings for each other are never in doubt. Their ability to be together is the problem, and that's kind of geopolitical. That has to do with where they are.
And the political circumstances that
they find
make it hard to
themselves
move, and so on.
And it makes it hard to be an artist, right? Like, because you think, well, he could have just stayed in Poland, right?
Yeah.
Like, so he wanted to leave because, well, he's an artist, and also because the idea was to be with her. But the thing is that she's held up, by the person in the troupe who's also politically affiliated. She's basically kind of steamrolled into entertaining some important German communist guests, and actually she can't be with him, really, which is something he doesn't know until they meet later on in Paris.
Yeah, although she also did say when they meet up that she found she didn't have it within herself. She felt it wasn't just that she was held up that night. There's a suggestion that had she been braver or more headstrong or something, that she would have left.
Yes, the film has a wonderful, complex kind of romantic feel. So on the one hand, it's hyper romantic, right? They must be with each other, and they sacrifice everything to be with each other. On the other hand, it depicts a very pragmatic and adult view of sex, right? So kind of, there's almost never any doubt that their feelings are for each other. On the other hand, when he's in Paris, he finds another partner. In the meantime, she's found another partner. Part of the reason for finding the partner is pragmatism. They're people who are helpful, right? So it's got kind of like, the film is a film that kind of resonates because it's grounded in at least kind of my understanding of the things people do. They're never clear cut,
Let's say at this point, we've got quite far in, but let's say spoilers ahead, although we've talked in some detail. Spoilers are, obvious. Yeah. I think there's a complication in the love story, which is that there's a bittersweet aspect, because they get to be together for a while in Paris. She marries an Italian. He's gone to Paris and he's managed to escape illegally.
Yes.
The Soviet Union. She marries an Italian, is able to leave to Palermo legally, and then she moves to Paris. She can be with him, and they, when they're in Paris and they're working together artistically and they are able to live together, it sours.
Well, I think
it's not entirely happy.
My view or my take on that is that what sours it is also what's appealing of it. So on the one hand, they have the freedom to be the artist they want to be. They don't have to sing paeans to Stalin the way that they did back in Warsaw, But on the other hand, they've got to hustle, right? They've got to sell the parts of themselves that they don't want to sell in order to get ahead. So, there's this moment when they're in Paris where he tells her, that basically she's got to be sweet to this guy who's very important and, it's good for her career. And so from his point of view, you get the feeling that he is doing it all for her. And I think one can believe that. But actually, the things that they're all doing for her are things that she can't accept, is my view of it.
Yeah, well, I think there's a large element of that. For me, it was kind of... This is where the idea, the title Cold War sort of comes into it. The idea that their relationship, their love has for years had to be at a distance, and they've only been able to see each other at these very brief moments, and that's when. So it's like a cold love, and then at these few moments it becomes hot. When they can see each other, they embrace and they make love, and it's fiery and passionate, but then it has to go away again because she's only there with the troop briefly, and she has to go back and so on. And then when it's able to actually last, it starts to sort of fizzle. and which is why I found the ending kind of bittersweet. I don't know about you. I get the feeling you probably found the very ending very romantic.
No, I found. I
mean, the very ending.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, the very ending follows the logic of the story. And of course, in that way, I find it very Slavic or Russian, right? It's kind of, it's a very bleak view of the world. Yeah, that kind of... Yeah.
Bleak?
Yes. So in German Romanticism, there really is like this idea that you die of love, right? That if kind of part of loving a lot is that you die of it. You either die, commit suicide because somebody doesn't want you, or you commit suicide because the love is impossible, or you move on to the next world with your love, right? That can't find a place in this one. So in that sense, I think that the film has the ending fits in with that kind of logic.
How so?
Well, because they commit suicide. They
don't commit suicide.
Yes, they do. That's what they do. They get married, and they take all of those pills.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, well, that's the way I understood it. Yes.
Oh yeah, well, that probably makes sense.
And then they're just waiting to die, right? So they're waiting for the pills to take effect. And she tells him, "You take more because you're heavier. You'll need more."
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
What did you think the end
I
was?
didn't even think about it. Well, I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. I didn't even think about the pills. I mean, you're absolutely right. Of course, that's how they get out of, because otherwise their life is sort of doomed, isn't it? But
yes.
And it's doomed anyway because they're killing themselves. You're right. But what I noticed about the end, what I picked up on at the end, is the very last line where they're waiting at the bus stop, and she says, "Let's go to the other side. The view will be better there." Which obviously now in the context of they're killing themselves, like that's quite a better way to finish our time. But I thought of it in the sense of it reminded me of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, in that there's this idea in that line of the grass being greener on the other side. And in the grass being greener on the other side, there's an idea of you'll never be satisfied with what you have. And which brought me back to that idea of when they can finally be together in Paris, it sours, because it turns out that there's an imperfection in their love. It can't be perfect, but then, and the reason that I related that to Eternal Sunshine is it has the same sort of idea of these two people who are perpetually brought together, like they're like cosmically, and then when they're together, it all goes wrong, and they wipe each other's memories of themselves, but then they come back together again, and like the cosmos is constantly bringing them together. They are fated to be together despite the problems, and that's that bittersweet idea.
Yes, well, the bittersweet, is very evident in this film, but though I must say,
but I feel like a plum for not noticing that's what the pills were. I mean, I didn't think about that.
Oh.
I just thought I didn't even think anything.
All right, Plum, let's go on. Let's continue with the discussion.
No, carry on.
I think there is a geopolitical dimension because, so people make choices, or they each make choices, and the choices are each legible in the way that that humans understand each other, which is never really fully, right? So when he finds out that the first separation is they're meant to leave together. They're just meant to cross. There's no Berlin Wall as of yet, so actually it's quite easy to cross from East Berlin to West Berlin, right? So the idea is that they're going to cross it together. She can't make the appointment, right? But then the troupe travels on to Paris, and they meet briefly, right? And then he sacrifices himself by going to Yugoslavia to meet her. And has a lucky escape because the Yugoslavia police doesn't want to be involved in an international incident and sends him back rather than sending him to Warsaw. Right? Meantime, she marries an Italian only so that she can go be with him in Paris. Right? And the moment in Paris is when things fall apart. And my understanding of the reason that things fall apart is really, this having to sell a part of yourself to kind of be able to live there. It has its own complications. Though those scenes in Paris are amongst the most romantic. The scene where they're dancing in the jazz club, I just thought it was beyond beautiful. And then the scene where she gets drunk, and the rock and roll scene in the bar, I thought that was magnificent.
Yeah, to Bill Haley, Rock Around the Clock.
Yeah,
and she flings herself at 3 or 4 different men in one shot, one long take, and then the camera's shaking and following her around, and he's not there. He's not
even noticing at that point, right? So, and that's kind of when it falls apart. So in his mind, he's been doing it all for her, but actually, that's not what she wants. And actually, she says something like, I had sex with him 6 times in one night. The other man,
Michelle,
who's the record producer. So ever since you've left Poland, you're no longer a man, she says. And basically, kind of part of the reason is because under the guise of doing things for her, it involves selling her, really, or her selling herself. So she returns to Poland, and then and I think kind of, again, another romantic gesture in the film, he goes back to find her in Poland, knowing full well what's going to happen. And what happens is he gets sentenced to 15 years of hard labor, and he gets his hand smashed so he can no longer be a musician.
Yeah, mangled quite horribly.
And then what happens is, and again, this is like torture upon torture, separation upon separation, all rather exquisite. So she basically marries, the political guy because he's got influence in order to get him out, right? So it is. So really, I think kind of the geopolitics does come in. These people are separated by boundaries in Europe that the EC has removed. And that Brexit is kind of trying to put back in. It's
it's a love story for the modern Britain.
I think one can make a very good argument for it, because it's not just for modern Britain, because actually these right-wing movements are happening all over. They're happening in Hungary, they're happening in Germany, they're happening in Denmark, they're happening in Italy, right? So I think kind of, the film is very interesting in what, those political divisions made of people's lives and feelings.
Yeah.
So the onus is on the lives and the feelings, but it is actually the barriers, the separation, that keep
the story
keeps separating.
Like the story Cold War doesn't exist. Like it's not a tragic story or anything without those barriers being put in place.
Exactly.
Exactly. There's also something what you said about their lives kind of souring in Paris because of having to sell themselves is interesting, because I think there's an element of that as well. Well, there's a slightly different version of that in why they want to leave Poland, which is that the very opening of the film is the artistic director duo going to these various kind of villages and mountain towns and things, listening to these songs people sing and recording them, and it's like all these songs are they are subtitled, and they are in that, as you said, kind of doomed love Slavic way. They're all about the woman that I can't have, or if I have her I'll die, and all this kind of thing. And there's a real kind of honest artistic project going on there. They want to preserve these songs. They want to make something out. They want to make people proud of them. And then it turns into we're developing a sort of salon for artistic types, which is where they audition everyone and meet the girl, played by, incidentally we should say, Joanna Kulig.
Who's fantastic.
Oh, she's great. When the state kind of takes over, these kind of local kind of village songs become something that is sold by the state.
Yes.
So they're taken from the villages that they started in. They're taken from the people working to make an kind of honest show about them, and they are put on stage in kind of palatial theatres with a huge picture of Stalin behind them, saying, this is the Soviet Union.
Yes.
And this, it's like a kind of, it's like not Disneyfication, that's slightly different, but it's do you know what I mean? It's a co-opting by the state of this imagery.
So let me clarify, or let me elaborate.
It's like a forced selling out. Put it that way.
Exactly. Well, yeah.
Well, they have no option.
No, they don't have any option. So what starts off as an almost anthropological project, right? They're trying to collect peasant songs because within the communist culture, it's for the people and it's by the people. So actually, originally, they're just trying to collect and display, these beautiful peasant songs from various regions, the mountains and so on. But what happens is, the show business starts, right? And then there's like almost like an Aryan push. So actually, one of the women doesn't look right because she's got dark hair.
Yeah.
So they've got to like dye her hair. And then the next pressure from the state is that this show is such a success that could you? It's actually, I forget what the exact words, but it's the equivalent of in your act, could you put in some praise for the next 5-year plan and the greatness of
they talk about
communism or whatever.
I forget the titles, but they use the names of kind of food production projects and things
That's
like
right.
that.
So
and we'll sing about that as well.
Yeah, let's sing about our 5-year plan to increase electricity or something, or agrarian.
Yeah.
So, and actually, so I think the film has this really interesting contrast that basically in the the Iron Curtain countries, they've got to sell out on their art, on their ideas, right? They've got to kind of incorporate propaganda, or actually they won't be able to continue to exist. Yeah, that's kind of made pretty clear, really. But on the West, kind of they've got to compromise other things which are equally unacceptable to them. In order to like be able to do their thing. So I think the film has them torn between East and West. So kind of the film does present both of those dilemmas as being kind of real dilemmas. So the socializing, the meeting people, the making yourself attractive to people is seen as kind of like one of the ways that you commodify yourself in capitalism. Whereas, in the communist countries, you have to sing like a hymn to the tractor or something, right? In each show. But those things are seen as being kind of intentional, intentional with each other. So, and then of course the whole realm of feeling and lust and longing and, interpersonal interaction is played out in between this tension. And so beautifully photographed that you almost feel a pang. Like, it's so, I mean, to me it was just a pleasure to see, like, everything, like the actors. So Joanna Kulig has this wonderful kind of impassive, slightly angry face, that you get the feeling that she's really has like experienced the worst and she's immune to everything. And then every once in a while she'll light up, right? Like she'll be full of life and energy, and but kind of most of the thing is like, it's like this lively, loving spirit encased in a lifetime of bitter experience. It's like she conveys that so well. Whereas actually, he's the one who you get the feeling. I mean, at one point she calls him new bourgeois. You get the feeling that he's had an easier life. That kind of. And part of the reason why he's had an easier life is because he's a man. Like, kind of, one of the things that you're told about her and that she tells, it's almost like kind of, a lifetime of abuse of one kind or another, right? Like from sexual to, she's forced to spy because she's on probation. She's actually kind of made to do all these things against her will,
Again, there's a reflection in that where when they're in Poland and they're in the first kind of couple of years of their passion, they're in a field and she reveals to him that she's been telling the government guy various things about him, and she says, nothing that would get you in trouble, but
I had no choice, I'm on probation, is what she said.
It's like, what was I going to do, because I've done time in this, and he can't take it, he storms off. As well he might, fair enough.
Well, but him doing so, being able to walk away, is also a sign of how inured he is to the realities and the complexities of life under that type of bureaucracy, because he's obviously never had to make those choices himself to that point.
But then it's reflected when they're in Paris, and she's talking to Michelle, and having a good time. But then she storms up to him, to Victor, the fella, the boyfriend, and says, "What have you been telling Michelle? That I killed my father?" And his kind of defense for it, it's not a very good defense.
They love that here.
They love that here. Like,
Edith Piaf.
Edith Piaf worked in a brothel, and people love her all the more for it.
Yes.
She's like, "What the fuck are you doing? This is like my life," And he basically doesn't really apologise, and then says, "I won't do it again."
But the way that the film works, and it's so beautiful, is that the moment that he walks out, when she tells him that he's spying on her, it reminds me a little bit of Jules Jim, which equally has like this kind of unpredictable and intractable woman. As he leaves, she jumps on the river, right? And then you have this beautiful image of her, like with her dress submerged underwater, just kind of swimming quietly on the river. Yeah, like
just floating on her back.
Floating. It's kind of an angelic image. It's like an image of purity. So, kind of whatever the external world forces her to do, this is what she also is. Yeah, and it's really beautiful.
There were shots that reminded me of Before Sunset, the Richard Linklater film, where it's particularly in Paris, where they meet up again for the first time in a few years. When she's there on the sort of tour, she's only there for a few days, and they have an hour together perhaps, and they walk together through the streets, and it's the two of them walking together, facing the camera, and the camera's moving backwards as they move forwards, and it's a fairly long take, and they're just talking to each other, and that's exactly the shot that Before Sunset is built of, and that's in Paris as well. And there's I mean, I'm not saying it's like deliberate or cribbed or anything. It's a beautiful shot, and it's completely appropriate. It just reminded me of the kind of like the beauty of the romance in that film as well.
Yes,
that meandering through the city is just a beautiful thing. It's like it's to be able to spend that time with the characters.
It is a beautiful thing, though. I think this one, does much more complex and interesting things visually. I love the Before Sunset films with a passion, in fact. But just, this film has images and, that don't recur in anything like in Before Sunset at all. I mean, they're just exquisite, evocative, meaningful images and shots. And sometimes, through use of a kind of a cliche. So, when they're in Paris, you see a lot of like cold garrets over the rooftops of Paris, right? Which are both cliche and at the same time work with the romanticism, of the film. It's very beautiful to look at.
Well, there's the wonderful bit where he says, I'll walk you back to your hotel. And she says, "You can't go, we can't." He says, "I'll just walk you a little bit." And so they walk, and then she says, "Okay, stop here, I've got to go." And she walks off, and she gets sort of 20-30 yards down the road, and she stops and turns, and it's all in the same take, and she stops, and then she comes back, and the camera follows her, and then she rushes back into his arms, and they embrace and kiss, and then she goes again, and that's like really just such a cliche.
No,
but it's just beautiful. Wonderful. It's great. It's absolutely great. It's exactly, but you're right. What the film
it is a cliche, and actually, I think that's another thing that makes this film so interesting to me. Because the shots in the garret are a cliche. That embrace is a cliche. The scenes with the trains are a cliche of romantic films of the 40s. And yet this film reinvigorates them, makes them beautiful and moving and, feel kind of very evocative and rich and true, really. So I think it's a wonderful film. The other thing that struck me is that it's rare to see music used so often and so intelligently in a film that isn't a musical, but that has very extended musical sequences.
Yeah, I was going to bring up something along those lines as well. They're singing all the time, and the film starts off with a number of different songs, and without context really early on. It's only a few kind of songs in that you realise they're being recorded by this pair. And then later on, you get to Paris and they're singing, and obviously in the show in Poland, they're singing these various songs, and they're constantly kind of recontextualized. And someone is always singing in this film. And actually, sometimes I noticed because the film is mainly Polish and French language, so it's subtitled. But a couple of the songs aren't. There's one where she's singing in Paris, or I think maybe they're playing a record in Paris and she's in the room, but they don't put lyrics. They don't put the subtitles up. So if you don't speak French, you don't know the lyrics, as I didn't. But like clearly the determination has been made that not knowing the lyrics is less detrimental than reading them and ignoring the image would be. You know, if the lyrics were on screen, you wouldn't be looking at the image, and the image is more important, and the image and the feeling.
Yes.
And I think that's wonderful.
A really good point. Yeah, I think that's true.
It's only a couple of times. Most of the songs, you do get the lyrics to them, but
I did wonder also if it wasn't. You know, I'd have to see the film again to know for sure, but it seemed to me that also there was one song that was being used over and over and over again, which is the one she makes a record of, because originally it's a folk song. Yeah. Right, and then they translate it to French.
Is that the one that she sings with the mountain?
I think so.
The girl from the mountains.
The thing is, I can't be sure.
Yeah, no, I can't be sure either.
But I think so. So I also wonder, you know, if another viewing would bring out that connection in the song kind of more clearly than I'm able to.
This is the one about two hearts, right? Four eyes, two hearts.
Yes, that's right.
But I can't remember the rest of the lyrics.
No, I can't either. But it's very beautiful. I mean, kind of, you know, we've been seeing so many other things recently, but I mean, to me, this is the film that has resonated more, and that, you know, since Phantom Thread, you know, I mean, it's a film I want to see again, actually.
Very short as well, an hour and a half.
Oh, right, okay.
Less than, about 85 minutes. Very brief. And
right.
Feels it, but do you know what I mean? It feels like appropriately, like it's concise, and it's so just about these two. And
I think what I also find really beautiful is that in romances, usually the love is one directional. Yeah, it's either
it's a yearning.
Well, yeah, one person longs for another, you know, who might ignore them, or, you know, the whole film is about getting the girl or getting the guy, or so whereas actually in this film it's established from the beginning that it's a mutual passion, that they both share the same feeling, right? So then the dilemma of the film is how to keep them together, right? So actually it's not about, you know, getting the other one to love them, or, you know, no,
exactly. It's that they are in love basically from the start,
the beginning, right?
And then it's about, as you say, it's about borders keeping them apart, and circumstances beyond their control, and trying to make their way, and as you say, the thing that I missed of really the only way they can be together is to die together.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because they're both believers, right? So, anyway, I just thought it was beautiful, and I had kind of, you know, there's this thing about sadness, which is, it's also like I like being sad at the movies. It makes me happy, right? And and the thing about this film is it had me on the boil. So there wasn't any moment that made me cry, you know, but like, it's kind of like an exquisite sadness that you feel throughout. Whilst also there's kind of like a throbbing passion, and of course the leads are so charismatic and attractive, you know, and the black and white is so resonant, and it's very romantic in the jazz cellars of Paris, you know, the screening rooms and the recording studios, you know, and the attics. It's kind of, you know, it's really exquisitely sad in a way that's very satisfying.
Paul McCartney said, "Sadness isn't sadness; it's happiness in a black jacket."
Oh, fuck off. Fuck off, Paul.
He's not much of a poet, is he?
No, he isn't.
There was that one wonderful bit. Actually, speaking of poetry, there was that great bit where, so as you say, in between the times that they are able to meet up, they do have other relationships and see other people, and which you don't see very much of. But one of them is the French poet who Victor hooks up with.
Yeah.
Well, not hooked up with, he's in a relationship with her, and that's that. She's a source of fun. There are some funny bits in the film. It's not all sort of bittersweet longing. There are jokes, and the one is where, as you say, he after seeing her, and they don't make love that night, but he sees her and they embrace, and that's it. And then he returns to their kind of loft apartment where they're just sleeping on the floor, basically. And
on a mattress on the floor, yeah.
On a mattress on the floor, and she says, "Have you been out seeing whores?" And he says, "I haven't got money for whores. I was seeing the love of my life." And she says, "Very good. Let me go to sleep." and so there's a joke in the she's not bothered, but I kind of felt like I wanted to know more about their relationship. Really, like, why isn't she bothered? And why are they still together? If there's a joke in just her being kind of spiky about it, but I wanted to know what's really wrong in their relationship. I want to see a bit more. It felt a bit cheap.
No, I mean, for me, it's obviously just kind of it's tied in to the film's pragmatism, and that actually, this geopolitical situation forces decisions on people, that they've got to survive in. So, I mean,
she doesn't so much though. I mean, she doesn't need to take up with the Polish guy.
Why not if he's sexy and attractive and
well,
she
there's
likes
that, but then
sleeping with him?
But she doesn't appear to be too asked by him. But then maybe that, but I think, well, let's face it, it's a 2-second moment that is played mainly for a laugh.
It is played mainly for a laugh, but then you're told more because you're then told, oh, I don't understand why you're jealous. She's already had 2 other relationships, since. So you just think it's it's one of those things. It's not a big deal.
And there is also that moment where when they are finally together in Paris, Victor and Zula, they're arguing over the lyric. The lyric has been translated by the French woman, this poet, and Zula is not satisfied with the lyric. She says it's stupid. I'm not going to sing it, and it threatens to grow into quite a debate between them.
And she's jealous.
And she's jealous, and I don't know. Again, kind of played for a laugh of it because it is a silly lyric. It's about the pendulum. Something about the pendulum hasn't stopped time or some stupid thing. It's a metaphor for love.
Yes. Which is very well explained afterwards.
Well, not really. I think it's satisfying. Because she confronts her, right? So that's when Zula...
So what does it mean?
Zula goes to the party and confronts her, and she's... What is that line, though? It's something about...
It's something that kind of distance doesn't stop feeling, which I thought was very resonant.
Yeah, no, I think the idea is really nice. It's just that it doesn't come across in the line. I'm totally with Zula on this one. It's a stupid line.
Whatever.
But that's a wonderful moment because you kind of think like that confrontation at the party. It's electric, like she's defending her place. She wants to see the other woman that he's been sleeping with.
But it's also very unreasonable, and this is why I think it's the richness of the film. I mean, here's a woman who's married this Italian only so that she could leave the country legally, so that she could meet up with her true love in Paris, right? And, she's being jealous of this fling that he's had.
Yeah.
Like, it's not logical. And actually, that's what I love about the film. Because actually, sometimes things aren't logical. Like, they are about feeling. And you can completely understand her jealousy whilst also thinking how unreasonable it is. Like, the feeling is understandable even through its unreasonableness.
Yeah. Well, it's the unreasonableness that makes it understandable. Love isn't logical.
That's right.
As we know. Also, in the scene when they're in the attic arguing about the line, I think she looks exactly like Julie Delpy, which just helps me kind of think about the before movies a bit more.
You see, I don't see that because what I love about her face is it's very sensual, but it's also incredibly sad. It's like, you do feel it's a face that's bruised, and in fact she does have some imperfections on her lip and so on. Like, you get the feeling that this, and you can imagine, like, the film starts in 1949. They've just finished the war, right? Like, what did these people live through in the war? It must have been even more horrible, than what we see, which is pretty horrible, right? So, and her face to me kind of it's kind of just it's like it's a person who's bruised and kind of who carries a lot of sadness with her, you know.
She's probably supposed to be, I mean, she's probably supposed to be older than 18, really, but that's what she struck me as at the start, like just this kid kind of chancing it in a way, looking for a new start.
That's right. Well, you definitely get this feeling that you know, she wouldn't normally be there anyway, that it is a chancing.
Well, yeah, and they do say that she's well before the audition, when she says to the girl, "What are you singing?" and she says it's this mountain tune, and she's basically doing it to try and you know immediately that she's trying to sort of
hide her own voice in the better one.
Actually, that's not what I was thinking.
Oh, well, I
was thinking she was trying to sort of almost sabotage the other girls to get in sort of in place of her. But I think yours is just as probably a better interpretation of what's going on there. That she's not confident in her own voice enough.
Yes. Well, I mean, because that's also part of the characteristics that she's given, that she doesn't believe in herself.
Yeah.
I mean, he's constantly having to tell her that she's great and that she's worthy and that, you know, he loves her and, you know.
She struck me as a bit more of a con artist at the start, do you know what I mean? A bit more kind of savvy. Which is not to say she's not being savvy, but a bit more kind of ruthless, maybe.
I mean, that's a characteristic that remains throughout the film. I mean, you know, this is a woman who marries one guy with the Italian to get to Paris, and then she actually marries the other guy to get her lover out of jail. So, you know, like,
yeah.
You know, though.
And what the fuck does he do? Nothing. It's a waste of time. So why is she into him? This is the mystery.
There's no mystery to me.
Because he's sexy.
Well, because he's sexy and he loves her. I mean, you know, he goes and basically gives up his life for her. What are you talking about? I mean, you know, kind of, would you walk into Auschwitz because the woman you loved was there? Because that's kind of almost the equivalent of what he does.
I wouldn't.
Well, he did. You see?
She can perish.
You're not romantic. I mean, you know, 15 years and you see kind of the first image you see, his head's been shaved, you know, his hands have been smashed, he's clearly been tortured, you know, kind of, and he did it for her.
Yeah. I think he looked like a Stella Artois advert.
What do you mean?
You know what I mean? Like, he looks like sort of hardy, slightly autistic Eurotrash.
I thought he was gorgeous.
Well, you would.
Well, you know, I think he was. He is. And actually, I think it's interesting because he does not look like a pretty boy. You know, actually, like his face is really lived in, and it's quite angular. So from some angles, he looks really beautiful, and from some angles, he looks kind of rough, really. And he's, you know, he kind of, I mean, the film covers 15 years, and there's not a day in those 15 years that he's shaved.
I was going to say, depends on how much 5 o'clock shadow he's got that day. That's how rough he looks.
So, but anyway, I think it's a very, very great film. I highly recommend that people see it, and I would like to see it again for our next podcast on this film.
Are we doing two, are we?
I would like to, yes. I would like to pay more attention to the images and the music.
Okay.
I think there are things, you know, that we haven't plumped.
Okay, if you want to.
Yes.
When else is it on?
It's on Wednesday at noon at the Electric.
Noon? That's shit for me, to be honest. It's on at 5:30 on Thursday.
Well, let's do that.
Let's do that one. Yeah, interesting movie.
More than interesting, I think it's truly great.
Yeah, well, you certainly got a little bit more out of it than I did, because I didn't even notice that they died at the end.
Oh.
So...
Well, we will confirm that at our next podcast.
But we'll pay more attention. I want to pay more attention to the songs, I suppose.
And there are connections. I think there are things... The film is integrated and kind of rhyming in different sections in ways that I haven't kind of, you know, quite been able to extract yet or kind of make sense of upon only a first viewing. Though I must say that, you know, in a first viewing, it's like very satisfying. It's very beautiful. From the first like 5 images or so, I really thought, you know, he's a visual poet. Like, even the faces of the peasants when they began to sing, you think, my God, like, you know, you don't see faces like this in cinema, right? Like, kind of, you know, one of the old men had these incredibly beautiful blue eyes while he was singing.
Well, it was in black and white. You can't tell.
The eyes were very clear eyes. Okay, so he had these very beautiful clear
red eyes.
He had very beautiful clear eyes that popped out. You know, that was just kind of so you know, things have been selected with care and also for poetic resonance. It's really incredibly beautiful. It's an incredible film.
It's funny because when that first face came up on screen, I thought this is exactly the kind of face I'd expect to see in a film like this.
Really?
Yeah, I thought, you know, a kind of old, kind of bad teeth, not particularly well kept, kind of lived in Polish peasant face. I thought I've kind of seen that 1,000 times in a full frame black and white movie. It's not to say I didn't like it, but I just thought it didn't feel like, oh my God, I haven't seen this. To me.
Okay, well, we have different frames of comparison because, you know, kind of, I urge you to find me an American film which has faces like those.
Well, that's what I meant though. I meant like in kind of Eastern European. I was like that. That's kind of what. That's almost like
so
like
you're thinking of
Shibboleth.
like slow cinema, Bellatar. Faces.
Yeah, like it's a cliche.
No, it's true. I get that.
But again, not a bad one.
They are kind of like Bellatarish faces, really. But then, you know, the interest in this film is that you have those faces at the very beginning, you know, and then the stars themselves, or the protagonists themselves, are stars, like they're very magnetic, you know. So it's kind of, I really do think he's a visual poet, really.
And as we're seeing it twice, I'm glad that it's only 90 minutes because it's not ordinarily the kind of film I'd be that asked about seeing twice, to be honest. As much as I liked it.
Oh, why not?
I don't know. It's just like love doesn't do it for me.
Well, maybe seeing it again will give you a little spark. Well, give you a little push. Might change your mind. Might change your life.
You see, for me, if it's not Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy talking about philosophy, then it's nothing, mate.
Well,
and this ain't that.
No, but it's at least as good and arguably maybe even better, which is why I want to see it again.
Well, and so we shall.
Right. Well, thank you very much for listening. This is Eavesdropping at the Movies. We are on iTunes,
SoundCloud, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube.
Yeah, if you're listening to us, you know where to find us already anyway. So thank you very much for listening. And
we urge you to see Cold War, which is out in Birmingham the next few days.
That's right.
At the Electric.
Yeah.
And hopefully at local screenings wherever you are. It's not getting a big release. So.
And we will be there
Thursday.
So if you see us, say hello.
Yeah, and if you don't see us, don't.